One of my favourite activities is reading bad TripAdvisor reviews for crap hotels. That's normal, right? So when 150 Afghan refugees moved into the top 2 floors of the Grand Hotel in Scarborough, I thought I'd take a look at the public's feedback on this gracious act of cultural enrichment. Spoiler alert, it wasn't very positive. To be clear, the government didn't reserve the entire hotel for the refugees. It was just the top 2 floors. This is a popular hotel in a seaside resort where the paying members of the public are living with the migrants. Before we get to the reviews, let's listen to what a caller to the Alex Belfield show said about the migrants' behaviour when he visited the hotel.
There'd been a riot in there on Wednesday night. They'd actually been smashing furniture up, etc.
Well,
this was the dinghy divers.
Yes, well, they get very upset. Well, in Glasgow, when he came out and knifed people, the internet wasn't good enough, and we are barbarians from a lot of these places, you've got to get your own back some way.
And because diversity is such a strength, the hotel has to be patrolled by burly security guards 24/7.
I went being a bit nosy. I thought I'd go and have a look in there on Friday afternoon, and they've got bouncers actually inside there.
Bouncers inside there.
As Belfield explains, the deal is profitable for the hotel because the government, via taxpayers, is giving them 250 quid for rooms that would normally be empty or rent out for around 40 quid to the general public.
Part of the deal, with these hotels is that they put these dinghy divers in on a 6-month contract. It's something like 250 quid a day each because they have the 3 meals and all of that stuff. And then at the end, they get a refit. That's the deal from the government. It's unspoken, but from what I understand, they get the carpets and the beds because they do trash it. It's common knowledge. They don't have the same sort of respect that we have.
The hotel will also have compensation arranged for when those hotel rooms inevitably get trashed. Now let's get to those reviews. On the way I realised there were a lot of people just stood about while hundreds, or seemed like, of children raced around screaming and shouting, piss up the walls and no quilt on the bed, and these said children running in and out of the room. We decided we didn't want to stay there and headed back downstairs. I overheard people talking angrily about the kids and people just stood about. They were refugees and more buses were just parking up. I spoke to the man on the desk and asked for a refund and explained why. He then started shouting at me, calling me a racist. There are numerous reviews like this that say exactly the same thing. When they complain about the bedlam surrounding them, they're called racists, despite the fact that they're paying customers and their holiday has been ruined. The staff and management at this hotel have probably been trained by someone from the government to shut down complaints by aggressively playing the race card whenever there's a whimper of dissent. Nothing new there. People called racist by the receptionists if they complain. I saw a man getting in a lift after a queue of 30 people and he said to an employee, "Why are all these people staying here?" To which the man who works at the hotel said to him, "You are a racist and you should not complain." The guest then said, "I'm paying to be here, so I have the right to complain," to which the employee said, "No, you don't." We should have been informed of the amount of Afghan refugees staying in this hotel, and again, the amount of security that was present did not make the stay any easier. The hotel, which was to service over 500 guests, had only 1 lift operating, as all the lifts were broken due to the children playing in around them and causing the lifts to fail. Worst hotel in the world. Hotel or prison? This is the worst hotel I've ever been in. The building is appalling, the rooms are dirty, the staff are surly and unresponsive. The place is full of uncontrolled refugee children who are absolutely out of control and nobody is disciplining them. Refugee children allowed to run riot with nothing said. Many children running around unsupervised, laying of sofas, riding scooters. It makes me a little uneasy and intimidated. The biggest problem we had was the amount of Afghan families that virtually took over the hotel. The children were left to run wild and make as much mess as they could. The lifts were broken by them pressing the call button over and over again. They smashed the fire alarm on one evening. It annoyed me that they had their own restaurant and did not integrate with other guests. Many such cases. Areas out of service due to urine smell, we were told. Guests waiting 2 to 3 hours to check in arrived at room after fighting with Afghan children, running riot, and the lift. Disgusting. The hotel was a nightmare of young kids running around and shouting like banshees without any parents in sight, and food being chucked about along with the empty packets. By far the worst part is the hooligan children being allowed to run riot on all floors. We complained, other people complained, nobody ever spoke to the parents to tell them this was unacceptable. Most guests were elderly and unsteady on their feet. The brat kids run around them, nearly knocking them over, and this happened several times. Refugees all over the hotel. If you go into the lift, kids pressing the buttons. Litter in the corridor outside the rooms. I took photos 2 days it was there. If you go outside for a cigarette, They pester you for a cigarette and lighter. Wasn't informed Afghanistan people had been housed at the hotel. Food discarded everywhere, lifts being used as toys by all the children. Sorry, lift, as all the others were broken. Would never stay there again. Absolutely disgusting. People smoking in the rooms and could smell it in the corridor. Absolute chaos. Council decided to house hundreds of immigrants in the hotel. Kids running everywhere, screaming, throwing food all over the floor. Very rude staff when we questioned why we waited. They were expecting guests to eat from a self-service buffet, which I saw children putting their hands into. The reception area and various corridors were also full of refugees, some of whom spat at us. There were around 100 refugees in the hotel, which included a lot of children that were running riot. They seemed to be getting priority service in a private dining room. We felt like second-class citizens. My room was burgled as I slept. I lost over £1,000 of stuff, including phone, wallet, watch and clothing. Staff were dismissive and rude. When I reported this, I was made to feel like an inconvenience. CCTV showed youths who had entered the hotel from the outside. The matter is in the hands of the police. I have genuine concerns about the safety of guests at this hotel. Don't go here. Filthy, rundown and staff not very helpful. Putting disabled people on 6th floor, immigrants put in hotels put on the 1st, 2nd and 3rd floors. They were treated better than us who had to pay for this trip. Not a pleasant atmosphere at all, kids running around swearing and running into the elderly. So we rock up to the Grand Hotel to be greeted by a massive checking-in queue, which me and my partner patiently wait in for approximately 30 minutes. Behind us are two of the most disgusting people I've ever witnessed, clearly off their head on some sort of drug and absolutely stinking to high heaven. And still given a room for the night. The hotel has gone to ruin. Staff working as hard as they can despite backlash from paying customers over the hotel housing Afghan refugees. It's truly put a dampener on my short break away because there seemed to be no control over young children running around causing havoc. One of the main lifts had been broken, causing so much trouble as I was in a disabled room on the 2nd floor, so I was reliant on the lift. The lift call button was missing, meaning you had to touch the bare connection. The pool table damaged, the children's machines broken and out of order, the once beautiful piano had been smashed and now ruined, a child even set off the fire alarm by smashing the glass. This is not acceptable when it cost a pretty penny to stay there. Worst hotel ever, the place is an utter dump run by clowns. Plagued with drunk, abusive, intimidating people at every rundown corner. Be aware hotel discipline is a disgrace. Foreign children running riot, screaming and shouting, also playing with the lifts so you can't use them, also triggering the fire alarm, a very unsafe feeling around the hotel. The place was overrun by immigrants who showed no respect at all for paying guests. The children were allowed to spit at elderly guests, play football in the reception area, and the mess they'd left was disgusting. Urinating in the lifts, and what was done? Nothing! Why? Because the government are paying over £60,000 a week for these illegal immigrants to stay in the Grand. Steer clear of this hellhole, please! And that's just a small selection of the reviews for the Grand Hotel over just the past 2 weeks. We have untold numbers of native citizens in this country living in fuel poverty. We have homelessness on the rise. And we have a supposedly conservative government which promised to limit immigration numbers to manageable levels. Yet even aside from this latest wave of Afghan refugees, we see record numbers of boat migrants arriving every single day. No one knows who they are. In many cases, no one knows where they even go. To be clear, I'm not saying that all the people fleeing Afghanistan behave like this. But what happens to a country? What happens to a continent when you invite in millions of people, a substantial portion of whom do behave like this? That question is never part of the debate. It's never even spoken about in mainstream news coverage. And given what's happening at the Grand Hotel in Scarborough and many others up and down the country, it should be.